Good evening, everyone. Late Night Mega here, and tonight we are going to be going over some of the quick draft data as part of this series of what's the best way to build a collection on Magic Arena. So last time I talked about the Brothers War quick draft method, and even showed you guys a quick draft in action. And as of this point, I'm actually done quick drafting Brothers War, so we can go over the results of the quick draft. So this says Dominaria United. That's because the Brothers War event has ended. That does lead me to one of the downsides of doing quick drafts, is that the quick drafts aren't as readily available as the Premier drafts. You can see Premier drafts for Brothers War still available here to do throughout the entirety of the set mastery for Brothers War. And quick drafts will rotate every 2 weeks. And even right when a new set comes out, so right when Brothers War came out, quick draft was not available for it. You had to wait a couple weeks to do the quick draft for Brothers War. So that is a downside to the Brothers War quick draft. But let's take a look at the data and compare it to the data we had from Premier drafting a variety of different sets. And links will be in the description to the previous part, as it was part 1 where we really took a in-depth look at the Premier draft data. I will just briefly compare it here and not try to ramble as long about that. So let's hop over here. And I was a little bit surprised about this. So I ended up doing 19 quick drafts total. For a total cost in gems. Remember, we're converting everything to gems just for the sake of simplicity. Total quick draft cost is 14,250 gems. But we won back 9,000 gems with the... you see, we got quite an even distribution as far as the win rate goes. And so ended up losing 5,250 gems. So what this means is I could take this 5,250 gems, and instead of quick drafting, I could have went and just bought packs. In fact, I could have bought 26 packs exactly. What's really interesting is, you see, just the packs we won from the quick draft was 23. Actually, it was 26, because there were 3 instances. That was one piece of data I forgot to put on here. There were 3 drafts I had where I had less than 7 wins. Remember, 7 wins guarantees you 2 packs all the time. But for any other win rates, there's a percentage chance of getting a secondary pack. And that happened to me 3 times in the course of the... it would be 15 drafts that I didn't get 7 wins in. So I actually won 26 packs, and we could have bought 26 packs with that loss. But Late Night Mega, you say? Well, we should have just bought those packs anyways, because we would have gotten 2 golden packs had we bought packs from the store. And you are correct in that. However, that's not the whole story. Because we also rare drafted in these quick drafts. And so in the course of these 19 quick drafts, I drafted 66 rares and 10 mythic rares for a total amount of 76 rares and mythics. So even if you take what you could have bought here with these gems and add in the 2 golden packs, that would give you another 12 rares. That would be 38 rares. And that doesn't even compare to the amount of rares we drafted during the draft events, which was 76. So actually drafted double the amount of mythic rares and mythics as opposed to if we had bought packs with that amount of money. And once again, like in the Premier draft version, you can't just take this total cost of the drafts and just buy packs based on that, because when you buy packs, you just buy packs. You don't get any gems or gold back when you do that. So, but when we draft, we are winning some amount of gems back. And here I won a total of 9,000 gems back over the course of the 19 drafts. So I am only down 5,250 gems. That's not the same as taking 14,000 gems and buying packs with those. So just want to make that distinction. So what we can conclude here is that quick drafting to stock up on rares and mythics is a pretty good method. Now, this number here, the average gain or loss per draft, this is what we're really going to be comparing to with the Premier drafts. So, and this is where I found the data kind of interesting. I thought this number was going to be more around 400 to 500 gem loss per draft, the way that things were kind of going for me. But when I plugged in the numbers, that wasn't the case. And I only lost 267 gems per draft. So if we go back and look at Streets of New Capenna, this was where I kind of got back into Magic Arena and in a big way. Did 20 drafts, only lost 3,950 gems, had a phenomenal run. It was still an average loss of 197 gems per draft, as opposed to Brothers War, which was 276. That's what it was. Kaladesh Remastered, lost a little bit more there. Total gem loss was less, but we also did less drafts. So this is where this average gem gain or loss per draft helps us to compare these different draft formats between Quick Draft and Premier Draft, and also lets us compare data when we have different numbers of drafts that we're doing. Amonkhet Remastered was a little bit better, only losing 200 gems per draft over the course of 12 drafts. Baldur's Gate lost 8,400 gems total over the course of 24 drafts. That's an average loss of 350, so it was a bit more there. And in fact, most of these, you can see Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and you can see the win rate distribution there. Only 8 drafts of this one, but an average of 475 loss. Here's a fairly even distribution. And from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, 418 gems lost per draft over the course of 11 drafts. Throne of Eldraine, well, you can see I did phenomenal, and I actually gained from that. That's like the biggest outlier from this. Dominaria United, this was the biggest train wreck of the bunch. 18 Premier drafts I did. Total loss of almost 12,000 gems. And average loss of 663 gems per draft. Dominaria United Alchemy was a little bit of a different story. I only did 6 drafts of those, but only lost a total of 350 gems over the course of those 6 drafts. So that actually went phenomenal for me. We don't need to look at the traditional drafting. Brothers War Premier drafts, 13 drafts, losing 6,750 gems with an average loss of 519 gems per draft. And the Brothers War Alchemy, which I did 10 drafts of, losing a total of 4,300 gems or 430 loss, average loss. So what conclusions can we draw from this day? Oh, another interesting thing I wanted to show you guys. If we took this same win rate distribution and we plugged it into a Premier draft, yes, I do want to overwrite the existing data, we actually get almost the exact same gem loss results. Gem loss of 5,050 gems as opposed to 5,250, and average loss of 265 gems as opposed to 267. I thought that was really interesting. I'm not sure if that just worked out based on this particular win rate distribution, or if I had more data from other quick drafts that it would reflect kind of the same way. But I just thought that was neat. Anyways, so what can we draw from this? What conclusions can we draw from this quick drafting method? And there's several. One other thing I wanted to point out, the average rares per draft being exactly 4 is what it was. And remember, I only was able to track this for Streets of New Capenna, and I found out that I averaged 4 rares or mythics per draft, exactly 4, in Streets of New Capenna over the course of 20 drafts. And I just find it interesting that the quick draft method also got me an exact average of 4. Now, that's not counting these retro rares or mythics. I have these off to the side for a reason. That is because most sets do not have these sort of retro rares or mythics where you can get essentially two rares or mythics in a single pack. So that was happening with Brothers War. It also happened with Strixhaven, but I don't have data compiled for that. So I'll be interested to see if this holds up, this average number holds up in a set that doesn't have these retro rares or mythics. Also, another thing I'd like to point out is 3 out of 4 of my really bad drafts happened in drafts where I was pulling 3 or 4 retro mythics. I had a total of 7 or 8 rares and mythics because a lot of them were bad retro rares that were getting passed by the bots and that, so I was scooping them up. They obviously didn't make it to the deck, but I felt I did have an underpowered deck in at least 3 of those cases. And I think that contributed to those 3 drafts with the 0. And the 1 draft with the 1 win. But yeah, these retro rares are not actually included in this number here. I just kept those completely separate, just only looking at main set rares and mythics. Although there were a handful of cases in the drafts where I was picking the retro rare over the main pack rare, either because it was a better card for the draft deck, or because I had 0 copies of a particular retro rare that showed up, and I had 3 copies of a regular rare that showed up. And neither of them were going to make the draft deck that I was building in pack 2 or 3 or whatever, and it was just off color or garbage rares. So I took the retro a few times in those sorts of instances as well. I also ended up drafting 4 copies of 5th rares, so that got me 80 gems. That is also not factored into this overall gain and loss number. Because I do know that in some of these other draft formats, I did get 5th copies of rares or mythics and did get some small amount of gems back. I don't have data on tracking that. All right, so with that said, what kind of conclusions can we draw from the quick draft method? Well, I think looking at these average loss numbers, I don't think it matters if you do premier drafting or quick drafting in terms of building a collection. Now, obviously, there will be a difference between the amount of packs that you win here as opposed to, you can see I did 13 drafts of Brothers War premier drafting, and I still got 35 packs, which is way more than the 26 that I got here, the 23 plus the 3 from the random second pack winnings. So you will win less packs, but I think you can kind of count on losing less overall, and the maximum amount that you could lose per draft. So if every quick draft you did, you got 0 wins because you're just that bad, I don't think anyone could be that bad after doing 19 drafts, but who knows. The max this could be is 700. Whereas you saw some variance here, the maximum this could actually be is 1450 gems if you go 0 wins every single time. Now, of course, in the quick draft method, I drafted every rare and mythic in sight. I did use some discretion when it came to 5th rares. If there was a rare that the bots were passing because it was, garbage, and I already had 4 copies of it, there were a couple times where I didn't draft that because there was another card in the pack that I felt was really good for the deck. And of course, if that increases your number of wins you get in the draft, that's better than getting 20 gems, another 20 gems here by grabbing the rare. Because if you get 1 win, you go from 50 gems to 100 gems. So that's a gain of 50 gems by getting a win in the premier draft event, as opposed to just getting 20 gems and So there were a few instances. So this could have been more like 8 or 9, I think. But ended up being 4 because I didn't care as much to draft those. But overall, I don't think it really matters if you want to build your collection with Quick Draft or Premier Draft. Now, with Premier Draft, you can't get away with rare drafting and grabbing every rare in sight and getting this sort of distribution. You could end up drafting more rares than 4 on average because players will often pass rares that either aren't in their colors, whether they're good or not, when it gets to like pack 2 or 3. Or they'll pass those bad rares sometimes a lot longer than what the bots would in a quick draft. But of course, you're not really going to want to do that. So you may not average. I think you could realistically expect an average of 4 rares per draft, regardless of Premier or Quick Draft. I know some sets I did, like the Baldur's Gate set. I'm sure that my average rares per draft, if I had tracked that, was lower than 4 per draft because I had a lot of these drafts where I was drafting 0 to 2 rares in it because like half the rares in that set were kind of really not good. Other conclusions you can make. So if you're worried about like not being as good at draft, do the quick drafting because you can lose a lot less. I think the whole idea of doing double the amount of drafts since it costs half as much is more or less accurate. You're still going to plan on losing gems in the long term. Also for clarity's sake, the amount of gems it costs in terms of like actual dollars, assuming you're buying the $100 pack of 20,000 gems, because that's the most efficient pack to buy, most bang for your buck. A Premier Draft that costs 1,500 gems to enter comes out to about $7.50. So a quick draft costing half as much of that in terms of gems comes out to $3.75. So while in theory you can do double the drafts, this is why we're looking at the average gain or loss. I think you're going to get less variance on this number as opposed to like if you're doing Premier Drafts. Like you saw some of these, I had a higher loss because it can be really tough to get 4+ wins in these Premier Drafts. In these Premier Drafts events as opposed to the Quick Draft events. That was just my sort of experience, though I did have some that turned out very well. Like the Alchemy one here. And then I had some that were just a complete train wreck. So, yeah, I think quick drafting is a safer method. It's also a bit easier on your gold and gems in that you don't deplete it as fast as you would in Premier Draft if you were on the bad side of the average loss per draft. But I think either one of those could do very well. So whichever one you prefer, whether it's Quick Draft or Premier Draft, I don't think you can go wrong. But I do recommend you do drafting in some regard because you saw the amount of packs we could buy instead, and this kind of represents like 76 packs when we drafted. 76 rares or mythics, plus the 23, plus this other 3, comes out to be a lot more than 26 plus 2 golden packs, which would give you 6 more rares or mythics each. That's not to say to not get golden packs or anything like that. I do think there is still a place for that, but the data just shows it's not better than drafting. I will be interested to see how these numbers hold up with when we have the next set, I'll do the tracking again for the next set. For Phyrexia, all will be 1, because I don't think that's going to have this sort of retro rare and mythic thing going on where you could potentially get 2 open packs that have 2 rares. Because I did have bots passing me some very spicy cards. I had a bot pass me a Skitterbeam Battalion in one of my drafts, and obviously I snapped that up right away, but that just makes me wonder if there was like a Worm Coil engine in the retro spot. That's what I would have to imagine. So yeah, that is going to wrap it up for the data portion here of the quick draft. I am going to be continuing doing the quick drafting method. I'll probably end up doing more quick drafts with the next set. But next time I'm going to lay out my whole collecting plan for you guys, and what I recommend, how to use your gold, and what to do if you're a free-to-play player. So stay tuned for that. But for now, I'll take my leave.